The mood of the nation is what unleashes the inflationary genie. I guess my question to you is, how do you really shape the mood of the nation in a more effective way?
OK, so there's two things. I'm going to come to the mood of the nation secondly, but what I would do is I would ask the Federal Reserve to step aside, and I'd ask the Treasury to take up the running. OK, and with the Treasury, what we'd be doing, we'd be moving from the arena of fixed income, and we'd be moving into the currency market. What the US, indeed, what the global economy needs is it needs more dollars. That was the whole idea behind quantitative easing, not central bank reserve increases. So what I would suggest is the Treasury steps up and it says, we want the dollar index to trade at 60. Kaboom! Can you imagine? The euro, the yen would be 30% higher versus the dollar. And there would be pandemonium, you would tell me, in foreign capitals. Sure, there would be. But what would they do? They would print their currencies. They would use that currency and they would buy US dollars. And with those, as they try and push the dollar back and stop their currencies appreciating, they would be like the Swiss. At the end of the day, everyone's going to be like the Swiss central bank, and they're going to buy Facebook regardless of the news. Secondly, because it's a social phenomenon, and the hardest thing, if I'm fair to the Federal Reserve, the hardest thing for the Federal Reserve is that they have to credibly promise to be something that they desperately don't want to be. They have to be irresponsible. And it's impossible. It's an impossible task for the Federal Reserve. And that's why I am campaigning that we need someone like Joe Rogan. We need a personality outside. Can you imagine we're playing poker? Just now, the credit market, like we said, in the last 2 months, Fed balance sheet's gone from $4 trillion to $7 trillion. And the credit market's gone, really, you're boring me. Nothing's happening here. And we touched 50 basis points on the 10-year. Now, you put put Uncle Joe Rogan in charge of the Federal Reserve. You think the banks are going to sit there on 10-year treasuries yielding 50 basis points? I tell you they're not. So what we're looking for is the redux. We're looking for the reverse of Volcker. Volcker was another kind of crazy guy 50 years ago. The problem was the reverse. Remember, 50 years ago, we were trying to constrain the money supply. Today, we're trying to expand it. And back 50 years ago, this crazy guy called Volcker, he came into town and he said, you know what? I'm going to raise interest rates in a recession, not by 25 basis points, not by 50 basis points. Bang, 100 basis points, bang, 200 basis points. And the banks went, holy cow, right? And we have to change our behavior. Changing social behavior changes prices. And this whole redundant debate about the Fed's balance sheet is a waste of your time and my time.
Hugh, I can tell you, if Joe Rogan ran the Fed, this show would get a whole lot more interesting. Unfortunately, most people don't think that's going to happen, and I'm sure you appreciate these are things you think should happen and could influence behaviour. Can you walk me through what you do anticipate and how you think this is going to materialise in the coming weeks, months, quarters, years?
Well, if most likely it's the status quo, yeah. And so the status quo is equity prices will go higher. We do leave a vulnerability. You see, I would rather that we radicalize the Federal Reserve than radicalize the political economy. And that's the danger. If left untouched, if no one is brave enough to do something crazy like that, then the political class is going to get crazier and crazier. And of course, we are just staring into this horrible, horrible period going into the election where we're fomenting anger. We don't know if decisions are going to be accepted. The whole thing about the virus is releasing lots and lots of pent-up frustration. The injustice of how the system presently distributes wealth, the system is broken. And so a mad, angry political system is something that I fear more. So if they don't want Joe, they can stick to this path. Prices will ebb and flow, but generally go higher until society snaps. And when we get angry, when I want to fight you to the death, then we're talking about a lot of inflation.
Hugh, I remember back in the day, it was always other people's capital that constrained just how freely you could think. You are a free thinker now, free to express what you will about this market. If you were unconstrained, if you had very, very patient capital in a moment like this, what would you like to do? How would you deploy it?
Well, I am unleashed. Thank you very much. And you know, I'm reading a wonderful book. What is it about how we should listen more to mad people, capitalism and paranoid schizophrenics. But anyway, what I would do, I would, very boring. I'd be long gold. I'd be long equities, and then I would be long foreign exchange volatility. I'd be trying to find the cheapest components of FX vol that are out there. I'd be saying Saudi Arabia peg's not going to last. The Hong Kong peg's not going to last. Just going through them all, picking up volatility, because the world is going to change. If the Fed doesn't change, then something's going to snap. So we may get higher prices, and there was a sneak preview earlier this year where stock prices, as we know, rallied, came back strongly in the month of April. But volatility actually began to change. Its association began to rise. When you start, or if you start to see a world where we get rising equity prices and rising volatility, people, you know, the world is set for big change. I would also, there's just really compelling kind of fixed income option trades that you can just bet for negative rates. Why not?
Hugh, this was the macro trader's dream. I remember in 2012 when we got the new administration over in Japan, and if I remember correctly, it was something that you were positioned for at the time. What did you learn from that experience, and how would you apply it to this one as you start to think about a market where you could see equities higher but vol explode?
Well, you have to have the position on. It happened after the election of Abe, and I didn't have it on, and then I built it. The hardest thing can be complexity. So the lesson is, you know, avoid complexity, and that's why I'm saying you can find kind of easier volatility packages in the FX market. The world's changing. You know, this is the dawn of chaos. 50 years ago, the world was chaotic, and we were asking our authorities to impose order, and they've imposed order, and it's been good and fantastic for the creditor class. The challenge today is we're saying to them, listen, we've had enough of order, and we certainly can't take higher interest rates. So give us chaos. But, you know, like the Bible says, and how a rich man gets to heaven, it's as hard as passing a camel through the eye of a needle. That's how hard it is to promise and to credibly promise to be irresponsible. And yet that's what we need. We need the monetary system to be irresponsible so that our society remains together.